So you said there wasn't any money for college, but I noticed there's a ring on your finger. Is that from high school or?
And they were like super nice to me.
Well,
It was
we were working in the charcoal mine, and older sister was almost a year younger than I was to the day. Both of us had a birthday in July. She didn't have any opportunity to go to college, so she said she would come and take care of my children, and I could go one year, and then I would take care of the children and send her to Silver City for 1 year until we got her education. So she came out, and she had lived in flat land where you couldn't hardly see a mountain anywhere. We lived right under the big high mountains, and she just felt choked to death with those mountains around her. She wanted to go back to Texas where there were many mountains. So she went back to Texas. And I had only 2 semesters of college when she went back. Then when it was hard times on the railroad, and Oliver was going from El Paso to Toya, Texas. And they said, oh, we're just desperate. We need a school teacher for these Mexican kids in the pre-first, you'd call it. And we can't find one. He said, my wife can teach those kids. And so they said, well, bring her down. And so he called me, and we packed up our suitcases, and there was a neighbor said we could live with them right then, and we moved down, and I went over and took the class in the Mexican kids in the basement of the school. And they said that I could teach if I would take Texas history by correspondence, and my professor would give me the examination. Then I could teach school. So had a boy in there that was probably Joe, that was probably a couple of inches taller than I was in that class. They all talked English because they were born there in Texas, and it wasn't any problem. They just segregated them. The Mexicans lived in one end of town, the white people lived in the other, you know. And so we had the rule that said, when the bell rings, the first bell rings, anybody that wants a drink of water, go get it. When the second bell rings, don't go get a drink of water, get in line. So Joe went after the second bell rang and got his drink. We went inside, and the kid said, teacher, did you see Joe go get a drink when he wasn't supposed to? And I said, yes, I did. And I said, all right, Joe, you have a choice. You can either go upstairs and see the professor, or you can lean across your desk and get 3 swats from me. Take your choice. So he said he'd lean across the desk and get 3 swats from me. Well, I just took my hand and swatted him like that. So it was embarrassment, not pain that he felt. From that time on, Joe was my king. He kept those kids in line like you wouldn't believe it. If I wanted something done, Joe did it. So I taught school there, and next year I got promoted upstairs to the white kids class. I had first, second, and third grade in one room. I had Delbert. That was a real hard year because all the kids expected me to be partial to my son, and I almost had to be mean to him, you know, so they'd know I wasn't partial. Then we moved back to El Paso, and of course they wouldn't let me teach school there. And I was we had a home there in El Paso, and Oliver was out working, and I was in the back room ironing and had the radio going. And he fell, and the ladder was kind of pinned him down. And he called me, and because the radio was going, I couldn't hear him. And when he finally got out of there, he was just as mad as they say a wet hen. And he really did talk ugly, and he said, "You have to take me to the doctor right now." And when we'd come to a red light, he'd just say, "Press your horn and go on through the red light." Well, it wasn't very far to the hospital. So I got him to the hospital, and he wasn't hurt that much. Of course, his back was bad. When he worked in the mine, he had to get over by a pole and pull up his back with some hurts and stuff. His health was bad too. And after I thought it over, I thought, what if he had been hurt and I had to work and make a living for my family? So I'll go to college. I didn't tell him. I went up to, got my hair done, got on the bus, went up to college, and enrolled for college, and come back and told him. He said, "Oh, you can't do that. We don't have money enough for books, and we don't have a car to drive, and yeah. I've already done it, already paid the money." And so then I went to school, and the month that Delbert got his high school graduation, I got my BA. I was afraid to quit, afraid I wouldn't have the nerve to go back. So I taught school and went to summer school and got my master's. And then they came out with No Child Left Behind thing for them, and they asked if anybody would volunteer. And I volunteered for that, and I taught for another few years. And so I have a picture in there that VA Larry made of, I was Phi Beta Kappa, the honor student.
Mm-hmm.
And about 16 hours beyond a master's degree. It wouldn't count on a doctorate degree because it's undergraduate work, but I did get an education. But Delbert was graduating from high school. And,
Neat. So you graduated the same year as Dad graduated.
And so this is a ring from my bachelor's. I got a book and a ring when I got my bachelor's. Time I got my master's, I knew how little I really did know, and so I didn't get anything. B.A. Larry took it from a newspaper, and he was experimenting with doing pictures, so he made the picture for me. I bet
Neat. Very neat. So, well,
all right.
some eating apples. Those are ready to eat. So
Those are mealy.
did you splice the tree out front? The tree out front's got two different kinds of apples on it.
They're supposed to thin the red ones.
Did you make that tree yourself?
No, I bought that tree, and they were the nursery was kind of experimenting, and it when it bore a heavy crop, it began to pull apart, and Bill wrapped something around it to keep it from pulling apart when it got too many apples on it, and so it's still producing. And I had somebody knock on my door Wednesday morning already. She wanted to know if she could have some of those apples. So I took that blue bucket, and she helped me walk up there. I hadn't walked up there. It's quite a ways for me to walk. And we picked a few more apples in the blue bucket than what's in there now, and poured them in the car for her, and then pulled down the limbs and picked that many for me. And I put up 3 quarts in a pint of applesauce.
That's good. So when, do you remember the street address of your house in El Paso?
Yeah, we lived in quite a few places in El Paso. We lived down the river, and that was too far to drive to work. So we moved up on 2nd Avenue, and then when we had to go back to, if the job looked like he could stay in Toya, we'd move back to Toya. We never did own a house in Toya. And then we moved back to El Paso, and we bought a half-acre of land and built a house on it. And
How long did that take you to complete the house?
well, it was just a frame house, and it didn't take very long to complete it. But the railroad, when business was good, they worked you to death. And then when business slacked off, he was unemployed.
Sounds a lot like some of the jobs today.
And Oliver loved that railroad work. He just loved it. When we lived in Toya, we had an old man that lived up the street from us, and that was the other end of the track. You know, farm was Toya, Texas, 20 miles from Pecos. And every morning about time for that train to come in, you'd see this old man go down to the depot and hang around as long as that train was there. Then when the train pulled out and went on, here comes the old man back. Every day, every day. I didn't want Oliver to do that. I wanted, so I retired early so that we could move far enough away that he couldn't even hear an airplane, railroad. And now today I love that advertisement where I hear those trains go choo 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 choo.
Christy's not good enough.
And I guess I still have a pass on the railroad.
Still have a pass on the railroad, so you can go ride it for free.
Yep. I don't want to ride it.
No, train's kind of a neat thing. So what do you plan on doing the next 5 years?
Well, when when Bill got so bad that we could no longer do temple work, they had gotten a book. He and my sister Lucille had gotten a book that some of their family had owned land in New York City before it was a city. And when they got ready to build those skyscrapers, they wanted to be sure they had clearance on their land before they went to all that money to build that. So they put out this book, put out the information somebody put in a book of all his key line and descendants that had come from these people in New York City. And and Lucille let somebody borrow it, and they didn't give it back. And he had just gotten another copy after we got married, and that's what he wanted to do, was do the temple work for those key people. And when Bill and I married, I was 79 years old. He was very unhappy with the wedding pictures. He said, wedding pictures are supposed to look young and we look old. Well, when you get 79, you look old, you know. Not much you can do about it. When you get to be 100, you look 100. And so we got married for time over in the temple. James got the permission as a sealer to perform the ceremonies, and Delbert and Larry were both temple workers, and they could be the witnesses. And so we got married for time over there in the temple, and we started doing those names. And at that time, you could leave your cards on the desk, and somebody didn't have family names, and just come in and take a family card and go in and do the endowment, but the family card back. And there was a time when we were finishing 100 cards a week and send them to James. James was extracting the names and putting them in a record for us and send them back. I paid the postage and the money, but he did the work. He was a sealer in Atlanta and a full-time employee for an engineer at NASA, so he was busy too. He had some very spiritual experiences while he was doing his that he told me about. And so when Bill got where he could no longer go to the temple because his mind was so bad, I would get out of a session and I would come in and sit and wait, and I'd send one of the men back to see what Bill was doing, and he'd come back and said he don't know if he's putting his shoes on or taking them off. So he brought him out and brought him home, and I kept him at home here as long as I possibly could. He had fought in the war, and some nights he would go to bed with his boots on because if they called him, he wanted to be ready to go, you know. One night he decided we weren't married, so I had to go sleep in the other bed because we might have a little baby and that'd be bad. All those things like that. But finally he decided this was not his home. He didn't know where his home was. Maybe it was in northern New Mexico or on the ranch where he grew up, homesteaded. But it was not here. And every time I'd turn around, he'd start down the street. Thank goodness he went down the street and the neighbors would catch him and bring him back to me. And I thought, suppose he gets away and I don't know where he is. I just couldn't stand that thought. So I put him in the nursing home down there because where he could be locked in, where he couldn't get out. He found out he couldn't get out, but he was just wasting his time. What was he doing?